I felt motivated, or even a duty, to respond to the recent hysteria over this coronavirus. Now, I hope that my skepticism is inappropriate because of the magnitude of the reaction that we've experienced as a society. Now, it's very tempting to trivialize this as just more Trump xenophobia, but people a lot smarter than our president have chimed in and jumped on the bandwagon and started making a lot to do about this as well. So my immediate question is, what is it that they are not telling us? I don't have answers to this question. I don't have answers to most of the questions I'm going to raise today. But the basic reality is I have more questions than answers. Now, what I'm labeling an overreaction is based on the same data that the people who made all the noise have presented to us. And the reaction in the media is very disproportionate to the magnitude of the problem based on available information. Let me use a few numbers to support this argument. Globally, something in the range of 3.4% of people who've been diagnosed to have coronavirus have died. A smaller percentage is probably a more accurate number because only the most severely ill people were even tested. So that's one point I want to make. Secondly, we look at data from the World Health Organization by way of the CDC, and as of February 11th, they reported 72,000 cases in mainland China. That number is probably a lot larger by now, but it's maybe barely a six-figure number. Now, with that large sample, they still had only a case fatality rate of 2.3%. Now, when you compare that to other conditions that I think deserve more attention, you'll understand why I am labeling this an overreaction. I'll get back to that in a minute. Now, there is an issue with making adjustments for the age of the person in concern. The case fatality rate when people were between the age of 70 and 80 years of age increases to about 14.8%. So it is significant that we do a little more to protect our elderly. Now, in these same studies, no one under the age of 30 has died in Japan, and no one under the age of 50 has died. Let me restate that. In these same studies, in South Korea, where we have the best data, no one under the age of 30 has died. In Japan, where they have very good data, no one under the age of 50 has died. Now, we can look at a comparison of the total numbers, and then you'll understand why I'm saying this is an overreaction. Worldwide, as of 1941 Greenwich Mean Time today, March 12th, there have been 134,098 cases of the coronavirus documented, okay? They report something less than 5,465 deaths worldwide from the coronavirus, and they've documented 68, almost 69,000 people have fully recovered, okay? Now, the numbers are put in focus if we compare the number of people who died from influenza in flu season 2018, 80,000 people died in the US alone. So far this year, depending on your source, and this was reported by the CDC, from October 1st of 19 to February 29th of this year, somewhere between 20,000 and 52,000 people have died from influenza. Let me restate these numbers for emphasis. Worldwide, the total number of cases of coronavirus, 134,000 as of March 12th, today. And worldwide, something less than 5,000 deaths have been reported. Now, in this country alone, we've had 20,000 minimum, probably closer to 52,000 people die since October of 2019 from influenza. Now, we don't shut down schools for influenza. We don't end the NBA season for influenza. We don't stop the airlines business because of influenza. None of the things that we're doing have been done because of a much more prevalent and possibly equally fatal condition. Now, the thing I say about the fatality rate is based on the fact that for influenza, these numbers are in spite of the fact that we have a vaccine. So that's why I'm not so sure that coronavirus is any more or any less fatal, because we don't have a vaccine for comparison purposes. So that's a question for future research that's beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today. Let's look at another couple of issues that I think deserve more attention than coronavirus. 13% of the deaths in the United States in 2016 were due to heart disease. The numbers are only slightly better in more recent years, but we don't have accurate numbers. But 363,452 people were documented to have died from heart disease. Heart disease never makes the news. Another issue a little closer and near and dear to my heart is drug overdoses. 70,000 people in 2017 alone died from drug overdoses. And the problem is a lot bigger because most people don't die. We're talking about, again, a young population that somehow survives all these things that they do to themselves. But this number is greater than the number of people who died from HIV, car crashes, or gun violence in their worst years. But yet, it doesn't get half the attention that a condition that's caused less than 100 deaths so far is getting. Now, the real concern from a professional point of view is that a vast majority of people who've had this condition probably haven't even been tested. And I'm a little embarrassed that in our country, as of last weekend, according to CNN, by way of Dr. Sanjay Gupta, only 1,500 people in the US have been tested. Now, according to our vice president, as of this week, there's been 1 million test kits been sent out across the country. And let's assume that's true. There's over 300 million people documented in this country. I'm anxious to see the next census, by the way. We won't even talk about undocumented folks that are in this country. That's another topic for another day. But if you know 300 people, or if there's 300 people in your school, or 300 people in your church, or 300 people in whatever organization you're in, only one of you can get tested with the available tests that we have in this country, according to our vice president. Now, let's assume our vice president's data is more accurate than our president's information, and I resist the temptation to even talk about him. But basically, the idea is, I can't accept that the people in South Korea, the people in China, have a better capacity to generate, or better technological savvy to generate the ability to test their populations than we have. So that gets back to my first question. What is it that they're not telling us? There has to be something that they're not telling us to justify the magnitude of this response. Now, what matters more than all the politics is what should we be doing? Now, I do agree with all the recommendations to spend a little more time washing your hands, be careful about touching surfaces where ill people might have touched them. You want to do things to avoid spreading your germs if you're sick. All those precautions I fully endorse and embrace. But we should be doing these things anyway. All of the basic common sense kinds of universal precautions that are making it seem like it's something unique we're supposed to do for coronavirus is stuff we should have been doing anyway for a whole lot of other conditions, not the least of which is influenza. But we do need more data about so-called fomite spread. I'm not convinced, nor am I doubting, that people can catch this condition by coming in contact with something that a person who's sick may have touched, or their secretions may have touched. That data is still being generated, and I think most of what we're hearing in the news is speculation. So we need more information in that regard. Now, last but not least, I want to stress that we should spend a little more energy focusing on protecting the elderly. People with immune conditions, immune compromised conditions, and people who are over the age of 70 are at not only greater risk from coronavirus, but lots of other conditions as well. So when we talk about protecting individuals, let's not limit it to concerns about the coronavirus. We need to be, this time of year, focused on other contagious things, not the least of which is influenza. So last but not least, we all know that we can't count on our president especially, and for that matter, we can't count on politicians in general to be completely honest or transparent. The media, on the other hand, needs to be more responsible, more accountable to the public that they serve, because most people place an unwarranted blind faith in what they hear on TV or what they hear on the radio. So the message conveyed by the media needs to be proportionate to the magnitude of the problem. And they need to prioritize bigger problems and not cause the overreaction that I think we're experiencing. Now, as for the government and the experts at places like the CDC, we really need to resist input from people like our president, who will demean their activities or diminish the importance of what they're trying to accomplish. Professionals who will be around long after the president is gone need to emphasize telling the truth. And then both the skeptics like me and all the hysterical people out there, all of us will be better served if we can just count on the professionals to give us the truth. That's my message for today. I have more questions than answer. I'll follow up on this based on the feedback we get. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. We know you have alternatives. But for now, I want to thank you for your attention. We know that you have alternatives for your sources of information, but I thank you for making the wise choice.